Welcome back to Max Recaps. Today I am going to explain a science fiction drama movie, The Martian, released in the year 2015. So at the beginning of the movie, the planet Mars is soon, where some scientists were collecting soil samples, but then they got a notification that a big storm is moving towards them. Then all the scientists go inside the spacecraft, but a scientist named Mark gets caught in the storm outside. Other scientists think that Mark has not survived because even after trying to contact him again and again, Mark was not able to give any answer. Now all the scientists leave from there, but after a while, Mark comes to his sense. Then he sees a iron rod that has entered to his belly, which was causing him a lot of pain. Now Mark goes inside the space chamber and takes that rod out. Mark was very upset because he was not able to contact his scientist friends, and he was very nervous because of the storm occurring outside. Mark knew that NASA's next project would be after 4 years, and that 4 years was a long time for Mark. Mark had only limited food and water, which he would not able to survive for long. Then Mark makes a plan according to which he will cultivate potatoes on the land of Mars planet to experiment with the same thing. All the scientists were collecting the soil of Mars. Now Mark puts his spacesuit and goes out and start cultivating the land so that he can grow potatoes. But there was no water on Mars here. Mark was using the same water that all those scientists had brought with them on Mars. But that was not sufficient. But luckily Mark was a scientist and he knew the process of making water. Then Mark tries to make water by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in the first trial, there is an explosion because Mark used oxygen in excess amount. Now Mark corrects his mistake and fixes the level of oxygen to produce water on that land. Then after a few days, potato plants grow on that land and Mark is very happy to see all that. On the other hand, NASA declares that Mark has died in the previous mission. But few days later, a girl working in NASA sees some satellite images of Mars planet, where she notices that someone had repaired the damage of space chamber from the previous storm. Now the member of NASA knew that Mark is still alive and trapped in the Mars planet. Then NASA's officials decide that they will build a small spacecraft so that some food item could be sent to Mars, but the spacecraft will take 1 year to reach there. But here Mark had produced a lot of potatoes, but he knew that he could not live for 4 years by eating only potatoes. Then Mark again makes a plan, according to which he has to reach the place where after 4 years his team will be come to their next project. But that place was 3200 kilometers away, and the traveling car that Mark had was charged with solar energy and could not travel more than 35 kilometers in a day. But this was the only option Mark had. Then Mark reaches that place where earlier those scientists had installed a camera which used to transmit all the images of Mars to NASA. Now Mark puts 3 posters in front of the camera, where one question was, "Can you see me?" and the second poster had yes or no written on it. On the other hand, NASA officials, after seeing all this, turns the camera towards the poster written yes. Now Mark is very happy to seeing all this. He was talking directly to NASA officers through code words. Mark is relieved to know that a spacecraft of food is being sent for him. Then the news of Mark being alive reaches his friend, who were still moving towards the Earth. Now after a few times, for some unknown reason, the place where Mark had grown potatoes explodes. Then Mark sees that all his potatoes have been destroyed. And all this makes him very sad. Now Mark had only few potatoes left, so Mark decides that the food he used to eat 3 times a day, now he will consume that food only for once. This will enable him to live longer. Here NASA launches a rocket in which there was food and some important things for Mark. But unfortunately, before that rocket reaches Mark, it gets destroyed in the sky itself. Now NASA officials are stunned to see this. And when this news reaches Mark, then he also became very sad. Now NASA official asked China for help. China agreed to help. China's spaceship, which was about to go to Mars after 30 days, could save Mark. But a man suggests a different idea and says that the spaceship, which is returning to Earth, should be taken back to Mars again. This could have saved Mark and would only take a few months. But China and NASA rejects this idea because it threatens the life of other scientists. Here Mark was still not giving up and was working on some plan to get out of that planet. Now after some time, NASA official sees that the scientists who were coming towards the Earth are now changing their direction and going again towards Mars. Now everyone is surprised to see all this thing because there were no any order to do all this. In fact, the person who proposed this idea to NASA gave the same idea to the rest of the scientists, due to which other scientists went out to save Mark without caring about their life. China also believed that if Mark's friends were going to save him, then we should not stop them. China also supplies food for those scientists, and then with the help of China, NASA tries to save Mark. Now when this news reaches Mark, he is overjoyed and builds a spacecraft of his own so that he can reach the orbit of Mars planet where his friends were waiting for him. Now Mark starts his spacecraft, but because that spacecraft was a bit heavy, he was not getting off. Then Mark throws some heavy objects out of the spacecraft, after which the spacecraft starts flying up. But Mark then gets dizzy and faints, making everyone very nervous. Then after a while, when he regains consciousness, everyone becomes very happy. Here everyone in the city was very worried about this mission. Everyone was praying to God that Mark and the rest of the scientists should land on Earth safely. Then a female scientist wearing an astronaut suit come out from her spaceship with the help of a rope so that he can reach Mark. But this rope is not that long. Here Mark makes a hole on his spacesuit to get out, so strong air starts coming out of there, and with the help of this pressure, Mark comes out of his spacecraft and starts moving towards the female scientist. But by mistake, Mark's hand is released from the hand of that lady, but she extends the rope towards Mark, and this is how Mark's got rescued. Now after a few months, Mark and the rest of the scientists arrive safely on Earth. Mark is then chosen as the leader of all scientists. Mark guides his junior and explains how to survive on other planet. Now with this, the movie ends. So if you liked it, then make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out some other videos before you leave.